You know, my mom had recently passed away, Tyler, and we worked on her house, but we had been going through the house, and obviously there's so many boxes.
Yes.
And the old photographs that we found, and each one has a story. And, back in the day, too, when they had the Polaroids, your parents would write on the back of it, age 3 or whatever. And it really just takes you down memory lane. But for our next guest, he has a box of old photographs that really tells a story. Lance Rosol, he's a photographer, joins us now on the MegaCast. Great to have you with us, Lance. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So you are a photographer yourself, correct?
Yes, I have been a freelance photographer for over 20 years. I also work in the video industry. So right now I have a full-time job at Ford. I am a video producer there too. But the photography I've always done because I enjoy it. And that's just sort of my passion. I mean, I like video too, but photography is just something that's always clicked with me.
So if you've been doing it for 20 years, you remember the old school days, right? Putting the film in and then getting the negatives and going into a dark room.
Yes, it's interesting because when I started in photography, I, of course, had a film camera in high school back in the 80s. And, I liked it, but I was a little challenged because I have a condition called aphantasia, which means I can't picture things in my head. So a lot of photographers can kind of compose the shot in their head the way they want it, take the picture and sort of know what it's going to look like. I don't have the ability to do that. So I found it a little frustrating that I took the picture and I have to wait so long to see what I had and didn't have a correlation. So when digital came out, that's when I really began to take off because it allowed me to overcome that little condition that I had and see things immediately. So that's when I started really getting into photography.
Wow, just think of the technology and how much it's changed. But with that, the reason we have you on is because your uncle was a photographer, but you guys found a gem in some old boxes. Tell us more about that.
Well, so growing up, I had an uncle of mine, my dad's brother, who he was born here in Dearborn. He went to Fort St. He was born in 1921. In fact, he would have just had his 100th birthday not too long ago. He went to Fort St. And then after the war, World War II, he moved out to California. So he would come to town once every couple of years, or he would drive his VW bus or his Bug across country.
Oh my gosh!
He'd take photos, because he'd always be taking photos. He'd go back, he'd come back, the next time, and he'd bring the photos that he took the last time. So growing up, I had all these really wonderful photos of myself, that were taken by a professional photographer. So when I got into photography, this is the guy that kind of inspired me because I thought I wanted to be the person in my family that could take those kind of photographs. So I always strive to do that. But, and since he lived in California, I didn't really have a close relationship with him, growing up. And my mom didn't like him. She thought he was a little conceited. Those California guys, they're kind of stuck up.
Plus, you got to remember back in those days, a long distance call, it would cost you a pretty penny.
And he was a bachelor too. He remained a bachelor his whole life. So, that was also something back in the 40s and 50s that, people, why don't you get married? That wasn't him. He was a free spirit. So anyway, in the later years of his life, I did connect back with him. We talked a lot about photography. He was still into building computers. So he passed away in 2002. And when he passed away, I had asked my cousin who lived out there, who was my dad's sister, my Uncle Stan's sister's son, because I figured since he was as close as he had to a son, I figured he would probably get the house and go through things. And I said, if you ever run across any of his photos, could you please, send them to me? I'm a photographer. I'll scan them. I'll send them, I'll do whatever you want. Well, that was 2002. And so only this past February did I get a call from him saying that they found some boxes because they were moving. And there was so much stuff in his house at the end of his life that they kind of put things aside. I can understand it was a little overwhelming and maybe they just kind of lost track of it. But when they found it, they immediately thought of me. And so they said, we're going to send you these. There are 2 boxes actually of photos. So when I opened them up, there was probably, I would say 30, 40, 50,000 negatives,
wow.
30,000 slides, several hundred printed photos, and not just of my family, but of people that a lot of other people might recognize as well.
So when you started looking at them, what did you discover?
Well, it's funny because when they first sent them to me, they said they were going to send me a couple boxes of photography magazines. So I was expecting more magazines than anything. And when I opened the box, there was like a magazine on top, and then the next photo was the first photo that I saw, and it's an interesting photo. You'll probably recognize the person in it.
Oh my
As,
gosh, how cool.
so, and he's in a Shelby GT350. So I work for Ford, and I saw this, and I'm like, wow, I love Gilligan's Island. And I saw this picture, and then after that, I just started going through and finding just picture after picture after picture of things. Now, I knew that he said that back in the 40s and 50s and 60s out in California, they were sort of the paparazzi before they existed. So they would go hang out at like parties or hotels to see if they could get pictures of stars. So a lot of the shots I have are just kind of random shots of people, but there are also some things that he was hired to do. So if you'd like, I could just maybe start showing you some of these pictures. I feel I'm talking a lot about them. You want to see this photo,
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
Share them with us. So, but I'm just thinking, what was that like for you when you were digging deeper into that box?
You know what? To start off with, let me get you a photo. This is the man himself. This is my Uncle Stan Russell. And
He's handsome.
and one of the things that I found and that I knew about him was that not only did he, he was a photographer, but he also enjoyed being a character in some of his own photo shoots. So you can see that this was something he did for Ford. So he was one of the models, and he would set up the shot. And these are just some prints that I found. And here's another one that I thought was kind of interesting. So maybe it was an ad for a fishing pole or somebody. So it looks like he's in a little ice fishing shack, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
The cool thing is, so I found this picture, but then he took this picture too, which is so even more fantastic because that shows how he set it up. All his lights and all his setup and all his crew.
Wow.
And he was such a great photographer. I said it'd be one thing if you found 50,000 negatives of someone who was kind of a poor photographer. That'd be, but this guy, he had an eye. And it's interesting because that's one thing that I think that I've always had even before. I always had an eye for photography, and some people have it, some people don't.
Yep.
It's just like my mom. She's an artist. All this stuff on the wall here, she painted all this stuff freehand in the basement here. And that's something I always admired of people who could actually draw and do that, since I didn't get that talent. But this is something that, photography I can appreciate, I can understand. So here's another one. This is Bing Crosby and Rosemary Clooney for an ad for Squirt.
Wow, how cool.
And the cool thing is, like, for this shoot, I have all these outtakes from it as well. So he took that shot, and then he had all these different outtakes. There was another photo he did, let's see, see, right here. I don't know if anyone might recognize this. Some of the older people in the audience might. There was a TV show on in the 50s called The Untouchables. Well, this was the photo that they used for their advertising. It was a colorized version of this photo. So when I saw this, I thought, wow, that's The Untouchables. So my uncle, he took that shot, but I'm wondering, why did he have the shot? And then I realized these are the outtakes. So these, maybe their eye just wasn't, something was a little bit off, because they didn't have Photoshop back then. So if you wanted to, do if something was wrong, you had to just take another photograph.
Yeah, and think about that too. When you talk about how talented he was, you didn't have the equipment that you had today. Like, you had to really know how to take a great picture.
Exactly. And when I look at some of the things, he did a picture of the Ford Rotunda at night that I have here. One of the pictures, I have so many pictures, or something like this, where he shot the Hollywood Bowl at night. And he did it so he got a silhouette. And the skill to do that, is incredible. You have to know how much light there is and calculate. And as I said, I kind of take for granted a lot of the stuff that digital does for me that allows me to do my art. And he didn't have that. So I know that his skill level, even though mine's about here, his was like way up here.
So Lance, what are you going to do with this treasure trove of new photos that you have?
So from past experience, because I've had my photos online for many years, I've done stock photography before too, and I've seen people take my photos and steal them and put them on other stock photography sites. And so with these, since I know that these are very special and there's so many of them, I wanted to, my dream was to partner with Getty Images. That was my end dream. So I started posting images on different sites, and on a Facebook vintage baseball group, a representative from a company called Diamond Images saw those, and he reached out to me. There were pictures of Sandy Koufax pitching in a game in 1961. And he took maybe 40 or 50 photos. And he was so impressed with the quality of that he contacted me and asked if I would like to be on Getty Images. So it worked a little bit differently than I thought, but it was, and to me that, because protecting my uncle's reputation and the work means everything to me. So, and I know that Getty's is a very reputable organization, and they don't fool around with people who steal their work.
So have you made it through all of the photographs and the negatives?
No. So you know what? One of the things, I just want to go grab a negative here. It'll take me like 1 second.
That's okay.
I had everything here with me because I wanted to kind of give you an idea of sort of what I'm dealing with is the different sizes. So everyone's familiar with the 35 millimeter negative.
Right.
That's
actually in today's generation, they aren't. They don't even know what a rotary phone is. So.
That's right. And so these are 2x2 negatives. So these are getting a little bit better in quality, resolution, as we would call it, or megapixels. And then what you do is you go all the way up to a photograph that's this size. This is a 4x5 negative. Now, a 4x5 negative, they say, is the equivalent of like 400 megapixels of data. So when I scan these, a lot of times, it takes a while because every picture I'm scanning them and then I'm removing all the dust and scratches as well. So when you say how long this is going to take, this is several years long project because I don't even know what's in a lot of the negatives.
Oh, wow.
The photos I know, and I think a lot of the big stars and things I found, but then again, who knows, because I never know what's going to happen. And then, of course, there are lots of other pictures of my family, like my mom's, my mom and dad's wedding I've never seen before, pictures of me I've never seen before, pictures of my family, pictures of Dearborn. I put a couple photos on my iPad because I thought it might be a little bit easier to show you that way. I can just kind of scroll through a bunch real quickly. But just to give you an idea, kind of the things that he shot. So this is just in Los Angeles. So he shot a lot in Los Angeles too. And then he went to like Las Vegas. I don't know how well you can see some of this because I think I don't know if it's washing out or not.
No, we can see, yeah.
Can you see it okay?
Yep, yeah.
Okay. So all these pictures, and then so there's like a model shot, more like a pinup, I would say that you might call it. This is the Rose Bowl in like 1970. This is a theater in East Dearborn that burned down, or that was reconstructed years ago. This is a shot of my dad's cousin. I showed this picture to her daughter, to his daughter, who'd never seen that picture of him before.
Wow.
I showed pictures of people, my dad's cousin's widow. My dad and his cousin were the best friends growing up. I showed her pictures of her husband that she'd never seen before when he was 18 years old. The blessing that these came into my life is one thing, but I'd like to get them out to the people that they mean something to as well. And so any family members that I know, have, pictures of maybe other family members, I've reached out to contact them.
Right, because it's a snapshot in time and it's taking people down memory lane, and it's so great to come across this because in today's day and age we take everything digitally. How many people actually print a photograph any longer?
Yeah, and if you look online, there is a big resurgence in the auctions and things for old photographs, especially old sports photographs and sports memorabilia. That's always been something, but lately you've seen more pictures like this. Another picture that he took that he made a lot of copies of and prints of was President Kennedy. And he took several pictures at an event he was at. Now, this picture here has never been published as far as I know.
Wow.
So when this goes up on Getty Images, that will be the first time this image will be available to the public. And there's a lot of prints of this as well. So again, I don't know as far as what I have, what I'm going to end up doing with all of it. But in the meantime, I want to protect it. I've taken every image that was a photograph and put it in a acid-free backing. And that was one thing too. My uncle did take really good care of his images. He was good at organizing. I think when they put them in the boxes, though, they got a little mixed up. That's probably one of the reasons. But I would say a third of them were labeled, which is pretty good. Like you said, people have all their photos on their phone. And you know what? One thing that I like to always remind people, because I'm a photographer, I have my pictures backed up. Here I have them backed up in drives in my safety deposit box. If you have all your pictures on your phone and that's the only place you have them and you don't have them backed up, please back up your phone, because if you lose that, you lose all those memories. And the tragedy that we've seen in these basements being flooded. You know, I live in Dearborn. I live in West Dearborn. I know the history of this house. This house has never had a basement flood. I don't keep those kind of things down here anyway. You know, I've got some record albums and things, but like the photographs and stuff, you know, I keep on my upper level. But you know, take care of those old photographs and you know, try to save them for future generations. But also take care of your own photographs and back them up, because I've seen people who lost their phone and they lost all their images, and that's just horrible.
Oh gosh, it is. But you know, you have years of discovery yet to make. How exciting for you, and what a gift that this has come your way as well.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be able to share it too, because I said he was a great photographer, and I think I'm like him a little bit. I don't really put my work out there a lot. It's not like I'm always putting my work in people's faces. He was humble too. About that, and so I'm just glad that, you know, it might be 20 years late, but he's getting his recognition.
I look at some of those photographs, like a JFK, just amazing,
Incredible.
Just amazing. Gosh, and the life he must have lived, the stories behind the photographs as well. That's what seems so fascinating to me. Again, we're talking with Lance Rosol. He's a photographer who was lucky enough to come across some old photographs of his uncles, who was a professional photographer out in California. Lance, we wish you the best, but we so appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Hey, so are you going to be posting some of these as you discover new things up on your photography page or something?
Normally what I do is, since so many of these things are centered to Dearborn or LA, I've been posting them on groups like Facebook groups for vintage photographs for LA or for Dearborn, or like vintage sports groups. But for right now, since I'm building my Getty library, I'm kind of focusing on that right now. And until I get it out there, I need to make sure that anything I put out falls under their guidelines too, because I still own the copyrights to all my images. But as far as how I put them out there, I want to make sure that I'm doing that the right way as well.
Well, when you get to the end of it, we'd love to have you back on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, and who knows what I'll find. And as I go along, I'm going to start putting together collections. And also my goal, too, is to put together a gallery show that I could have somewhere of his photographs.
That would be absolutely fabulous. And I think you need one here in Dearborn and one out in LA as well.
Good idea.
Just our 2 cents. Lance, again, we so appreciate your time, and happy weekend to you.
Great, thanks. Same to you.